In the latest episode, Rudy goes on his first date, potentially ever, and he has an opportunity to have sex, but after what happened with Eris, certain things happen that mess up the night. So to begin the recap, Sarah has gotten past being friendly when it comes to Rudy. Now she's starting to be flirtatious, wanting to lean on him, maybe hold his arm a little bit, and eventually she outright asks for him to join her for the day as she looks to get a new knife. The two of them have fun, they eat food at the marketplace, get the blade, have a drink, and Sarah starts to reveal that part of the reason she started to drink a lot is because she feels so safe and comfortable around Rudy, and she starts holding his arm, and Rudy keeps going back and forth between, is this a sign? Is this perhaps her really liking me? Because, again, Rudy in his past life, no real experience with women or relationships. And in his current life, outside of Eris, who he had a very complicated and even toxic sometimes relationship with, he doesn't really know what flirting and what that means. But as Rudy offers to go to a different pub when she seems like she wants to still drink and she talks about going to his room, it clicks in his head and things begin to happen. Shirts come off, pants are pulled, but when it's time for Rudy and her to have sex, he can't get an erection. And with that, he's kind of shocked because, Rudy's a pervert, so he thinks, I can get into the situation, and even if I'm quick, I still did it. And for her, it's one of those things where for the guy it's embarrassing, and I guess for her it's insulting. As Rudy gets very stuck in his head about everything, Sarah decides to really dig in the knife, not literally, where she says that the only reason why she did all this is because it was an obligation because he saved her life, not because she liked him or anything. And that triggers Rudy's abandonment issue, since it does seem he was under the impression that she liked him, wanted to spend time with him. I wouldn't say loved him, but definitely had some kind of feelings. And with her being able to cut it off like that, that triggers feelings of Eris, and that leads to Rudy spiraling a bit. Now, when he spirals, he decides to start drinking excessively. And while he's drinking, Soul comes into the same bar, starts picking with him, and Rudy has had enough. He's dealing with this whole Sarah situation, Eris situation, having no one to really talk to. He has no real idea where his mother is, so he's just pretty much been stuck for months, if not a year, in this foreign land. And so he starts punching Soul repeatedly, and Soul just takes it because not only for the fact that Rudy probably punch-wise is not doing much harm, but at the same time, Rudy has let down his guard. He's not this creepy smile person who tries to make it seem like everything's all right or whatever. He's showing his vulnerability. He's showing his emotions. He's showing he's not perfect, and just kind of frazzles Soul a little bit, to the point where when Rudy stops, he's willing to have a real conversation with him. And in that conversation, Rudy goes into his erectile dysfunction, his girl troubles, his family issues, and Soul really warms up to Rudy. You could even say in a way that, at least I would say, that Rudy and Soul, they kind of maybe see each other in themselves. Since you can kind of imagine Rudy going on a path where he becomes Soul, and depending on what Soul's whole life has been thus far, he could maybe have been like Rudy in some ways. It's rather hard to say. The only thing we know for sure is that Soul's first idea about Rudy curing his troubles with ED is that he could take him to a professional sex worker, and that professional sex worker could perhaps use the various tricks of the trade that she knows, and that could help him. But in the end, Soul realizes that for Rudy, it's not about changing who's stimulating him, naked in front of him, whatever you want to call it. Rudy's at this point in life where, because of his trauma, because of his baggage, he needs a firm emotional connection before he can really have sex and give himself to somebody. And when it comes to Sarah, maybe if he talks to her, gives what they got going on some time, maybe she can be the person that he has this healthy relationship and sexual life with. But unfortunately, Rudy decides to do something incredibly stupid. Now, after talking for most of the night and really bonding, there's the idea put forth that maybe Rudy can join Soul and, travel with him a bit. Maybe get away from all this relationship drama. And in the process of having an out, maybe even, feeling better about himself since he got all his stuff off his chest, Rudy decides to put down Sarah's body, how he felt about her, and he's so boisterous that Sarah and Suzanne overhears him, and Sarah just straight up smacks him in the face. Suzanne is disappointed, and when Rudy realizes all that happened, he looks at the knife that Sarah dropped in front of him because that was a symbol of what they were building together, and as soon as things click for him, he's ready to stab himself right in the face. But thankfully, Soul keeps him from doing that, and since Rudy doesn't have it in him to just run after Sarah and apologize and explain things, Soul really does commit to the idea that, you know what, you need to get away from this area. We're on better terms now. I've seen and know what you can do, so join my group. We're going to go to the labyrinth in a distant area, kill some monsters, and maybe this could help you deal with what you're going through. And because Rudy needs to get away, and Soul is no longer picking on him about running away, he decides to take this opportunity because what else does he have going on? Now, when it comes to movies, TV shows, where you want to talk about live action or animated, I cannot recall too many that have handled the topic of erectile dysfunction like this show has. It isn't treated in that usual comedic manner where the guy tells somebody about what happened and they're laughing at him, or the girl's throwing insults and trying to console him in a way, but also kind of disappointed and also weirded out by the whole thing. We don't get that comedic sitcom side, but we also don't get that dramatic side either. We don't get him sort of doubling down and trying to either become some kind of horror or him just really questioning his manhood or anything like that. Instead, we get a balance. Yes, Rudy is definitely questioning what's happening, is very confused and a little bit scared, but at the same time, he has Soul, who strangely is a male character who, yes, his knee-jerk reaction is, let's just find you someone who's promiscuous and skilled to help you get out of this, but once that doesn't work, it's very interesting that Soul decides to shift and just recognize that maybe this isn't a physical thing, maybe this is an emotional or mental thing, and you just have to really find somebody who you connect with and can trust to the point of going this far. That to me really showed a lot when it came to Soul. For if you based Soul off of his initial impression, you would never think that he would have this kind of conversation with Rudy. And I would even say on the flip side, Rudy having this conversation with a man didn't seem like something that could happen, since whenever you think about Rudy and his closest relationships in this series, outside of Ruger, whose name I'm probably butchering, most of his strong relationships have been with women or else people like Eris. Rarely has a boy or a man really been someone he's bonded with in a meaningful way and have these kind of conversations with. Because even with his father, we saw that for most of the first season there was a real disconnect between the two until they kind of fought and hashed things out. And even then, it wasn't like they were now buddies, just they reconciled enough to be at peace. It's not like now Rudy is sending off letters with ravens or whatever to his father and writing to him. He's somebody who he may think about, but he's not someone he's actively trying to maintain some sense of contact with, even taking note of the technology that is of that world. So it should be interesting to see, just as much as it was cool to see how Rudy operated on a date and his first opportunity to have sex with someone without a kind of toxic background in their relationship. even though Sarah had to warm up to him. It should also be interesting to see how Rudy's relationship with Soul develops as perhaps one of the first men in his life where he doesn't have to prove himself like he did with Rudyard, and he doesn't even have to protect them in terms of like he had to for some of the relationships he had with women, and now they're on an even playing field in some ways. I mean, yes, Soul is more mature and older than Rudy, but at the same time, I think that Soul recognizes that he might be more older and more mature, but because of how powerful Rudy is, even if he doesn't show his full power all the time, they may not be equal in the same fields, but if you put all that stuff together, they balance each other out. So the next topic, well, last topic, and also a highlight, is also increasingly wanting to know Sarah's perspective on all this. For I don't want to discount how Sarah felt just because I'm a dude and what Rudy's going through is like a potential fear. But Sarah, she mentions that she was close with her dad and he's the one that got her into archery, but she doesn't go into depth about that relationship. So when it comes to her feeling comfortable and close with Rudy, there's still that question of, is it something that she hasn't felt in a long time beyond her dad? Was it somebody before Rudy who she had this kind of relationship with and they disappointed her or maybe betrayed her? What caused that chip on her shoulder that led to Rudy having to spend months bettering himself or bettering his reputation for her to even look at him the way that she did? And I get him saving her life definitely switched things up, but at the same time, she could have very much kept it on some, when we adventure out, I'm going to look out for you because you saved my life, so I saved your life, so I'll save your life, rather than try to get close to him in terms of going on a date, eating with each other, or even initiating sex. So with that in mind, I could only hope that between us getting to know her more, or maybe even getting some of those conversations she had with Suzanne about what happened with Rudy, we can maybe get a full 360-degree view on what everybody felt based off of that situation. If just because we know that Sarah's not going to be the last person that Rudy either goes out with or has sex with or attempts to have sex with. So just getting an idea of not only what Rudy's trying to do and what type of reputation or personality he's putting out there, but also how he's received, it could make things a bit more interesting when he meets other women or even monsters, because who knows if female monsters may be into Rudy. But point of the matter is, I just hope that we get a little bit more perspective on how Rudy's doing externally rather than just what we hear him say in his head and what we've seen thus far. Overall, an anime talking about erectile dysfunction in a manner that wasn't a joke or for jokes, it doesn't necessarily over dramatize it to the point of it losing its potential relatability. I swear to you, the better this anime gets, the more I'm tempted to pick up the manga, since I think this this series is going to have 2 curves, and I think the first one may end this winter, and then we have to wait till like March or April like last time. So I swear I'm so tempted to go on Amazon and just buy the manga series just so I don't have to wait to know what happens next. But being that I also know that adaptations cut a lot of stuff, and sometimes just decide to go their own way because they may pass the manga, I'm torn but very much interested because I'm really invested in this more than I probably have been in any show since And with an E many years ago.